Hello and welcome to Author Nation. I am Melody and your host. Author Nation takes you from idea to published book so you don't get stuck or overwhelmed or commit some of those costly mistakes that authors sometimes make. So if you are just starting out, grab our planning checklist for nonfiction authors. The link is scrolling past you right now, and it is in the description. Today, we're talking to Pauline Wiles about having your website be a 24-hour employee. Pauline Wiles is a website designer who builds attractive professional websites for authors and writers. As an author herself, she noticed others were often overwhelmed by this task. Now she's helping to dispel the myths around how difficult a web project should be. British by birth, Pauline is now a contented resident of California, although she admits to occasional yearning of afternoon tea and historic homes. Please welcome Pauline. Hi, Pauline. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for inviting me, Melody Ann.
Absolutely. Lovely to see you. Now, so most of your books, you do nonfiction, but most of your books are actually in the romantic comedy area, right? What has been your favorite book to write so far?
Probably my first book, when ironically I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. I poured a lot of myself and my homesickness for England into that. The title is Saving Saffron Sweeting, and that actually got the warmest reaction from readers.
Nice. Now, are your books all set in England?
Yes, for the fiction
Right.
books, yes. I did publish one nonfiction title, which of course does not have the setting.
Yes, yeah. So tell me about your favorite book.
Yeah, probably that first one. It's a light-hearted romantic comedy about running away to England when your marriage goes wrong. I wrote it as a little bit of therapy for some homesickness that I was feeling when I was new in California. And yeah, I packed it pretty full of English food and cake and desserts.
And there's a heroine?
There is, yes. Grace is a British woman living in California. She finds out her husband is cheating, and she decides that the best course of action at that point is to run home to England and take refuge there. So
Nice. And I assume she finds love there.
She does. That, of course, would be a spoiler, but yes, she presents herself.
Yeah, let's leave it at that. What's your latest book?
So after self-publishing several romantic comedies, I realized that most indie authors are quite stressed and overwhelmed by the whole process. So the latest book that I released is called Indie with Ease. And that's a self-help guide really for independent authors, not so much on how to do it, but on how to navigate the emotions and the feelings and the stress that go along with it. So
lovely.
I turn my experiences into some advice there.
Yeah, that is a great topic. So where can we get your books? I want to pop into talk about websites, but just where can we get your books?
Yeah, my books are available on Amazon. So if you search for my name there, Pauline Wiles, you'll find them. If you have any difficulty, then head to my main website, which is paulinewiles.com. And at the bottom there's a link to my separate books page.
All right, and I'll just put that up on the screen for people, www.paulinewiles.com. It is also in the description. All right, let's talk a little bit about your area of expertise. So when you're not writing, you are creating websites for writers and for authors. So when is the ideal time for an author to actually create their website?
If you're planning on releasing a nonfiction book, I think as soon as you realize that you have a message that you plan to share, you've got some expertise that you've identified, and you know something about the audience who you would like to talk to, then that is an ideal time to create an early website. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be extensive, but I really encourage people to start sooner rather than later, and then you can iterate and improve and figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, and why then?
Because especially for nonfiction, your ability to connect with your audience, build community, and establish yourself as an expert in your field is going to be very important.
Hmm.
And these are things that pair perfectly with having an early website and starting to build your presence and your confidence in your voice and how you talk to people.
All right. And you talked about iterations. So let's go back to that very first website, right? I've got an idea and I'm going to put up my very first website. What are the essentials to include in that bit?
So if you're at that very beginner stage, then the good news is you don't need tons and tons of stuff on your website. You can start with one simple page if you need to, say something about yourself, something about your topic or your expertise. You might not even have a book kind of formed or finished yet, and put some method on there for people to keep in touch with you. Ideally, that would be subscribing to your email list. But if that feels like too much, then yes, if necessary, list your social media links and just start with something then that gets the ball rolling. You've got a place online that you can call your own, and then you can take your time later and add to it and improve.
Yeah. So your name, your area of expertise, a way to build your email list. And if that's really too scary, at least put your social media. And
Yeah.
I'm going to add one more thing, if you don't mind. If you can find somebody to help you optimize it for search engine optimization, that will also be a good idea. Because it takes time, doesn't it, to kind of have those things work.
Yeah, so search engine optimization is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. If you're really looking for success in that area, you're going to need more than just that basic website. You will need to do some research into what the search terms are that people are looking for, and you're going to want to build out additional pages, probably a blog. But yes, when you get started, do give it some thought, but just keep in mind that this isn't something you can achieve overnight. It's going to be a process.
Exactly. So let's say that I'm a new author. I didn't have a business website. I'm not an entrepreneur or business. I'm a new author. And so I've set up this website and I'm writing my book. What might I do with this website during the process of writing my book? And you said something about a blog, for example. What are some of the extra pieces that as I'm writing, I might add to this website?
Yeah, you can certainly put a blog on there, and that gives you a wonderful opportunity to test your material, start connecting with your audience, start to get found for your topic, start to establish yourself as an expert in this area. So that's a great thing to add. As your work starts to come together, of course, you'll put some teaser information on there that there's a book coming. You might start to offer events or speaking appearances if you're speaking about this topic. You can really keep the website as a living tool as your book starts to come together and as your expertise and confidence grows.
Yeah, I love that because I think a lot of times authors think, okay, I need to do a website and it needs to be big and everything right now. And then they're overwhelmed because they also think they need to write their book all 50,000 words today, right? And then we get, authors, we get into this headspace where everything has to happen by 5 o'clock today because I have to cook dinner. And I love how you say, just put up that one page, start with that one page, and then add a little bit more and add a little bit more and build as you go, because you can attest to this. As you're building as you go, you're building your relationship with your readers, you're building your relationship with the search engines, so you're building all those relationships as you go. And I think they can really pay off at the end.
Yeah, just take the pressure off yourself. You're quite right in pointing out this doesn't have to be like this big, overwhelming task. You're not carving your website in stone. You can add to it. You can change things. Yeah. So yes, definitely get out of your own way and start with something simple and go from there.
Yeah. Is there anything that we should not have on our websites? Are there types of content that you say, like, authors, just stay away from that?
The place I see authors tripping up most often is when the website is actually older. They got started several years ago with some kind of a blog, and there's just far too much clutter on there. And they've still got blog posts on there that describe how they, spent their summer vacation 6 years ago, very personal stuff that doesn't relate to their expertise. So the biggest trap actually for authors is to have too much on there, and particularly older bits of information that nobody's very interested in anymore.
Yeah. And so can I break those two down? So one sounds like, it's okay to clean up your website and take off old content. And then the other piece, and I'll ask you, if you can elaborate on that, but the other piece that I want to touch on is you said something about nobody needs to know about your summer vacation. How personal should we get on our websites?
So that is entirely up to you as an author, what your expertise is and how much of yourself you'll be bringing into your online business presence as a whole. And we're all quite different in that respect. If you're writing, say, advice on meals that kids will enjoy, the chances are you're going to want to include some kind of casual family type material, even if you're not plastering your kids all over your website. And you take that to the other extreme where somebody is writing an expert book on a very corporate or business-centered topic, then no, their audience probably does not want to see them on the beach in flip-flops on the website. So I think we have to find a personal level of comfort with that, and also think about what's appropriate for the overall brand that you're setting out to convey.
I see that there's really this push to be more and more personal in our business. And I don't know about what you do, but my kids don't like, there are no photographs of my kids on my website, in my business social media, and almost in my personal social media. I actually don't post pictures of my kids anywhere without their permission. I always get their permission just because I want to be that level of role model. But yeah, I find that there's this push to give all your personal information out there and be very personal. And I think there's a difference between giving private information and being personable. And I think you can be personable without revealing everything that happens in your life. And a website's a good example of that.
Yes, and probably your website is going to be kind of one level up in terms of professionalism compared to what you would post in your day-to-day social media feed. The website is a little bit more of a professional presence, regardless of your genre and what your approach to all this is. I would say you always want to hold your website to a slightly higher standard than the, appropriate and spontaneous things that we might share on other social media.
Yes, exactly. I have 2 Instagram accounts for this reason. So back to the other question of cleaning up old content. Mm-hmm. Why not just leave it up there? And what should we clean up and how often? And can you just dig into that a little bit more for us as well?
Yeah. So if you have a lot of old content on your website, firstly, you're showing that you're not necessarily tuned into what your visitor is looking for and what they need. Now, it's possible when you get to the stage of having super fans that somebody will want to go back through 6 years of blog posts and read absolutely everything about you and everything you've ever done and every thought that ever occurred to you in the shower in the morning. But generally speaking, you want to be more respectful of your visitors' time and their needs, and give them more of the information that they genuinely find useful around your subject area. And then the other thing is, with a lot of old content on there, you're confusing Google, because if your website has a blog post from 5 years ago that's, kind of personal and random and doesn't really speak to your area of expertise, then you're diluting the message that you are sending to the search engines as to what your website is all about.
Great point. Great
But
point.
as writers, sometimes we can have a hard time with letting go of words that we previously crafted. And you're right that these days, even though there's a move to being more personable online, that doesn't mean that you need a ton of content that is unrelated to your subject expertise.
Yeah, it doesn't mean giving out private information. Being personable doesn't mean private. Yeah.
No, and it doesn't mean random information just because you think you need to do a blog post this week. If you've got nothing useful to say, then you're not really helping yourself by describing some mundane trivia that's going on in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Now, your website, your author website, is because you are an authorpreneur, right? You don't have a separate business about romantic comedy books. The main point is the books. And I think that's different than a website where you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, and there's a book that you've written that fits into that business. So would you give different advice to both of those people, those types of authors?
Slightly, yes. So if you're an authorpreneur and you see yourself releasing many books, either in a series or on related topics, then your books may well be the primary source of the income that you're hoping to generate. And so your readers are potentially going to focus more on the content of those books and how the books relate to each other and the learning and takeaways they'll get from each book. And your website, therefore, needs to drive either the sale of a book, or something not to be overlooked is joining up for your email list so that you can keep in touch with them.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the coin, if you're primarily, say, a service-based business, but you have written or you're publishing a book to serve as a business card and to showcase your expertise in sort of one book title, then the chances are that your primary source of income is the rest of what you do for your business. So if you're a service business, probably selling your time. And therefore, the website needs to position you and your expertise and the services that you offer much more strongly. And your primary call to action then could well be schedule an initial consultation or find out more about the rest of the work that the business does.
Yeah.
With the book then playing much more of a supporting role.
Yeah, kind of a way to bring people in. In fact, the book could be a lead magnet, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
You could give away the digital version of it to get people on your email list.
Yeah, it's a great lead magnet. It's a great thing to get you booked as a speaker, to show that you've got enough expertise that you've published a book on a topic. Your book can be your business card. You can send it out to business contacts and say, hey, good to chat to you. I thought you might like to dip into the book that I wrote. The book can then serve a very different purpose if it supports your business versus being your whole business.
Yeah, perfect. And I just want to backtrack because you've mentioned this twice now, and I just want to bring it to the forefront and talk about it a little bit. And that's email lists, lead magnets and email lists, and how that fits into your website. Because I find that one of the things that authors don't do that I think they should do is have an email list. And authors are like, why? They're supposed to just buy my book, and then they wander off. And, it's like, can you tell us, where do we put the form for the email list? Can you just talk a little bit about email lists as they relate to website development?
Yes. So to put this in context, you're quite right, Melody Ann, that having an email list is a really smart thing to do. And many authors overlook this because they think the primary purpose of their website is to sell the book or to close some kind of transaction. Whereas if somebody isn't quite ready for that, then asking them to join the email list is a really nice long-term investment in your relationship with them. In terms of building your website, I recommend that your email list sign up is available from every page. So often that community goes in the footer, but you might have certain pages where you want it higher up on the page as well. Pop-ups for offering your lead magnet. They are a slightly contentious topic, but they do work. So if you can bring yourself to implement a pop-up in a non-sleazy way, then that's well worth doing. And what a nonfiction author certainly shouldn't overlook is you want to be giving some kind of value, some kind of resource or quiz or checklist or mini course in exchange for that email address.
Yeah.
Some authors have understood the message that an author should have a, quote, newsletter. I don't actually encourage people to call it a newsletter because I want you to be super clear that when somebody joins your email list, they're getting something in return over and above just clutter in their inbox.
Right. So hence the quiz or the, for some authors, it could be like the piece of the book that you cut out. right? So that extra story or that extra piece that didn't make the book, because that's always kind of interesting, right? What didn't make it, but having something, not just sign up and get my newsletter, which I don't find very attractive either. Thank you for that.
No, very few people find that attractive these days. So even though in email marketing, we might use newsletter as a kind of shorthand for what we're doing, it's much better to present it to your audience as exchanging an email address for valuable resources. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, something that you mentioned was that technology is becoming simpler. It's more affordable. How is that changing how websites are being built?
Certainly, it makes it much easier for anybody to get themselves online with a simple website presence. I work mainly with the Squarespace website builder, but there are other very affordable options out there. One that is not well known that I recommend if people are on a super tight budget is called card.co. That's CARRD, so 2 R's in card. And that really does enable anybody to publish a very simple web page very quickly and very inexpensively. So I think there's a lot more power now in the hands of an author who is interested in making part of the website themselves or a simple web page themselves. It's much easier to get started, to iterate, and to configure the pieces that you need so that it looks good across different screen sizes and mobile devices. There are definitely fewer technical pieces to understand than we needed to grapple with several years ago.
Yeah. And along those lines, I just want to point out that there's at least 2 separate skills in building a website, right? So design is really important, and then technology is also important. And so you need to understand design and learn Squarespace in order to build something that's beautiful, right? So I actually have post-secondary education in computer science, but I can't make anything look pretty. And so I should not be building, I can do the back end, but I should not be building websites because they're not going to look good. I just want to point that out. Some authors are really good at the making things pretty, and some authors are good at, the tech side of things. And it's good to recognize those both. Somebody on Facebook has asked us a question. What was the second website you mentioned? Card. Was it CARRD.co?
Perfect. You just nailed it. Yes. Card.co, spelled with 2 R's.
CARRD.co. I just want to make sure that's good. Thank you for the question. Keep asking questions. We love questions. All right. So and that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that combination of design ability and a certain level of technology comfort, you're right that not a lot of people have those 2 things that they can easily combine. So it's certainly easier now to attempt a DIY website. It's a little bit easier as well to make a mess if you don't have at least a basic level of competence.
Yeah, and that was going to bring me to my next question. Should authors be DIYing their websites?
This is a real know yourself question. And you were just very insightful there, Melody Ann, where you said you can do this part, but you're not so good at making it look attractive.
Yeah.
I would say to any author, if you cannot afford any kind of professional help, I would prefer you to make a simple DIY website than to have nothing. So if money is a real barrier to you, then yes, make something simple on your own. But the secret sauce here is do keep it simple, because it's going to be easy to make a mess if you are not particularly competent in matters of design.
Yeah.
And also, if you're quite new in your book journey, it may not be the right time for you to invest a large chunk of change in hiring a professional. Because I love to encourage you to see your website as a living thing that you can iterate and improve and add to. And that can be expensive if you're hiring professional help every time. So a really nice middle ground is perhaps to start with what's known as a premium theme in WordPress or a premium template in Squarespace, where somebody like me has done some of the heavy lifting for you and got things started, and then you add your own content and you can take that as your launch pad. So I certainly don't rule out DIY because professional custom design is not for everybody, but just know you've got lots of options, and I really want you to have something up there, even if it's simple.
Exactly. I think that's a great answer, because a lot of authors, it's, they're bootstrapping, especially on your first book, right? If you're going to be an entrepreneur and you're going to do 10 books, but the first book you're bootstrapping and you might be working full time, and so there's time and there's energy and there's money, and you want to kind of prove things before you invest a lot of money. So thank you. That's a really great answer.
Yeah.
It's better than always hire a professional, even if you don't have the money, which sometimes you hear, right?
No, I don't think that's helpful. I mean, I've been there. I've been an author. I know what your first few months of book royalties are going to look like. And yeah, when you get to the point where you can hire professional help, that's where a lot of people come to me. But there are certainly affordable options that give you that starting point and can set you on the road to success as well.
Yeah. Thank you. And so following from that, what are the 3 biggest mistakes that authors make on their website?
Yeah, we've touched on some of this already. Definitely clutter. So that can happen if you know you're a great writer and you're not sure what to choose to put on your website. And that also happens with older websites that have a lot of material that's built up over time. Also, you mentioned design, and that could be a challenge. For a non-fiction author who is trying to establish expertise and to convey quality work and professionalism, you really can let yourself down if your images are poor quality, or if you just do not have a basic grasp of what good design looks like. So it's very easy to create something that looks amateurish, and unfortunately your readers will then assume that your book might be of a similar standard. And then the third area where people trip up, we've touched on this already, is not having some kind of strong call to action. So possibly joining the email list, but other actions that we want the website visitor to take. Almost forgetting that in putting the website together, it's not just there to sit and look pretty, it needs to actually encourage somebody to take the next step.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to add one little piece to this. What I've noticed in writer websites sometimes is writers can write. They're great. Authors can write. They're great. But it doesn't mean that they get their marketing copy down, right? So sometimes I see author websites and there's this long, they love to write, and they're writing and they're writing and they're writing, and they completely lose me. And what we really need is less writing and more kind of a hook, right? Like, if the book hook, or the lead or the download hook, right? The gift hook. I don't know if you've noticed that too. Sometimes writers like to write.
Yeah, so as a writer, really your biggest strength is also your biggest weakness when it comes to website design. Website visitors are busy. They're going to skim your website. They're not going to read every word, or at least not until the level where you're super, super famous. And it's easy to get caught up in writing many paragraphs that you think need to go on your website, and you completely forget that, in fact, your website visitor is going to skim. They're going to read the headlines. They might read some bullet points. They might look at your button if you're lucky, and then they're gone. They're moving on to the next thing in their day.
Yeah. Thank you. A really good point, because I know writers love to write. And sometimes I go to an author website or a writer website, and what it says is, I'm a writer. And I'm like, we know that. Get to the exciting stuff and do it quickly.
Yeah, and you don't need to have the first thing on your website being welcome to my website either. When you do that, I mean, not only is that very old-fashioned, but it also shows that your talents as a writer might lack some imagination.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we've talked about the mistakes. What about current trends?
You said quite rightly, there is a trend now in web design to show more of ourselves and more of our personalities online. So most of the time, a nonfiction author should plan on having a really strong author photo on the website. And if you're really selling yourself as the expert, you want to get booked for speaking gigs, or you're selling consultancy services, then you're going to have to step out of the shadows and be prepared to take a starring role with some very strong, probably professional quality photos. So that's one thing to be aware of. We also talked about the necessity these days that your website offers something in return for that email address. You really cannot get away anymore with simply saying sign up for the newsletter. And yeah, don't overlook your strong call to action. Keep in mind that people are very busy, and certainly keep in mind that there's a really good chance they'll be visiting your website on their phone. So for goodness sake, if you've had your website for a few years, get out your phone, borrow some other phones, and check that you're looking okay on mobile, because not only does your visitor not like it if your website looks poor on a phone, but we mentioned Google earlier. Google will mark you down for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I did was I asked a bunch of friends, right? Because some people are Apple and some people are Google, and some people are on iPads and some people are on tablets. I just kind of surveyed my friends, like, who has what, and can you tell me what you looked on and what it looked like? And because it can render well on one and not render well on another, and then it's really frustrating, but it can happen. And so it's good to have that information, isn't it?
Yeah, and depending where you're at in your book publishing journey, I think it's fine to ask your audience to help you with that as well. That can be a nice way to engage people and say, hey, maybe technical stuff isn't my expertise. Could you have a look and let me know? Because people will enjoy helping with that kind of task.
Yeah. And that's actually a really great way to be personable without giving out private information. This is part of your personality, part of who you are, without talking about your kids or what you had for breakfast, right? So I like that. Thank you so much. Great little tip right there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe don't do that if your book is about how to be a website designer, but otherwise otherwise I think your audience are understanding and helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and people like to help. People like to help. So aside from, you should put up blog posts on a regular basis, how often should we be updating our website?
So this is another know yourself question, and also know what your overall marketing strategy is. If you have either created the website yourself or you're comfortable with making updates, then I'm a big fan of keeping it fresh, making sure that your latest news is on there. If you have any live events or speaking appearances, make sure they are on there. And yes, if blogging is a part of your strategy for getting found by search engines, then yep, you want your regular blog posts. But on the other hand, if you are a year or more away from publication, you're not using blogging as a primary marketing tool, then yeah, you can take the pressure off yourself and don't feel you have to be paying for professional website help every month. It really does depend on where you are in your journey and what you're doing as your other marketing activities and your strategy for that.
Yeah, thank you. And so keep it fresh, but don't make it something that induces anxiety, right?
Yes.
So to do that, let it go.
Yeah, and I think that's a good guide for all of our book marketing. If something just becomes a millstone around your neck, then that's probably a sign that either it's not serving you or you could spend your marketing time better on something else.
Yeah. Or you're not ready for that yet, because some things are more complex than others. And it's good to start with the smaller things that you feel you can manage and move into the more complex ideas that are, take some confidence building, right? And some skill building before you get into them. So really great point. Thank you, Pauline. I appreciate that. So earlier you talked about a call to action, and I want to return to that, because this is really, I think this is really, really important. And you mentioned 2 calls to action, right? Get on the email list and buy the book. How do we know what call to action to put on? Do we put on the same call to action every page? Do we have different call to actions? How do we know what call to action, where to put it? I think this is so vitally important.
Yeah, another call to action that we touched on briefly that might be relevant for some nonfiction authors is take the next step in working with the business as a whole. So that goes well if your book is your business card to accompany another type of business. Yeah. So authors serve themselves best when they get clear on what's the ideal outcome after somebody visits the website. Many authors say to me, well, obviously I want somebody to buy the book, but you can be a bit more strategic than that and think to yourself, is that actually the thing that will make the biggest difference in your author career, either to support your author business or to support your other business? The one that gets overlooked the most is joining the email list, because of course that gives us permission to stay in touch. And then there are other calls to action. So if you're a consultant and the book is alongside your business, then you might want the call to action to be schedule a consultation call, schedule a free chat. If you're early in your author career, then something like, follow me on social media or join this Facebook group or some other community building action may in fact be where you want to go. So you decide on your primary call to action by getting honest with yourself about where you are in this journey and what sets you up for long-term success, probably over short-term success. Because my guess is if you're paying attention to the information that's on this YouTube channel and you're tuning into the other resources that you have available, you're probably serious about educating yourself and building some kind of long-term career, either as an author or as a business owner with a book.
Yeah, thank you. That was really good, and that's really important. And I know that it's a struggle for authors, right? What do I put on each page? One clear call to action per page is probably the best idea based on your goals. And talking to someone like you, Pauline, will help people kind of narrow down those goals and build a website that actually works. So thank you so much for that. How do authors stretch their website budget? Do you have any tips for, newbies? It's like, and I'm going to say, if you have the money, hire someone like Pauline who really knows what they're doing, right? Don't stretch your budget. But at the beginning, right, when you just don't have it, how do we stretch it?
So I always recommend that authors or anyone who's putting together a website spends on the images and the visuals that will be on there more than the tool itself. So for most nonfiction authors, that means you are going to want professional quality photos of yourself. If you are looking for what goes on other pages of your website, it's probably best to purchase some reasonably priced stock images compared to using the free photo sources, which are fabulous but can get overused. For example, there are only so many free photos of typewriters out there that we can all use before we start to recognize them. So definitely spend on your images and your visuals, and then save if you need to on the tool. And do consider either some DIY work on your website or assisted DIY, which would be my way of describing when you buy an affordable kind of starting point compared to starting from scratch. Yeah. So there's the big investment if you're ready for custom one-to-one design. There's the modest investment of a premium theme or a premium template. And then if you really do identify as a starving artist, then take a look at that tool we mentioned previously. Card.co does get you online for $19 US a year. That's 19. Add that to a custom domain name of about $12 US at Google, and you can put a very simple web page online and it will look good for $31 a year.
31 US a year. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I think that's it's great when you're starting out. And I have to really mention, I just love the comment, there's only so many free stock photos of typewriters out there, right? And I see the same ones over and over and over again when I'm looking at author websites. So thank you for that. That's a really good place to invest. Have we missed anything, Pauline?
I would just like to reiterate that even though I'm a professional website designer and people hire me for custom websites, I really do want you to get online with something. And it is very achievable if you keep it simple and you take some of the pressure off yourself to know that you can make a basic page now and then add to it later. And that's what some of my clients are doing very successfully. If you buy a premium website template, then you've got that starting point. It doesn't have to be this huge, great problem in your life. And then you can get back to the work that you really want to do, which is hopefully writing your book.
Yeah. And you have a website starter kit, right? At paulinewiles.com/website-starter-kit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's the full address. If you just go to paulinewiles.com, there's a free menu item there that also gets out to that page. Yeah, this is a Know Yourself download where I talk you through some of the questions around what is the best approach for your website. We touched on those angles of where are your skills and your preferences. And also my tips for which tool you should use depending on the place you're coming from and what you need. And my aim there with that kit is to get people over that initial overwhelm so that you've got a better understanding of what the initial steps are that you can take to make your author website become real.
Thank you. The link is also in the description for people looking at the show notes as well. So paulinewiles.com website-starter kit, pardon me. All right, Pauline, aside from grabbing the kit, where can people reach you?
The best place, of course, is my website, paulinewiles.com. You can contact me there. You can link through to Instagram, which is a good place to find me. But you won't be surprised to know that my website is mission control for how you might get in touch.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Pauline. Really enjoyed having you today, and you gave some really great insights for both new authors and established authors. And I actually really appreciate that you are speaking to both of them. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Melody Ann. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining me today. Author Nation is the place for you to go from idea to successfully published author. And if you'd like to join us at Author Nation. That's the wrong one. I've just noticed. I'll say it out loud. authornation.community. That link is also in the description. And I'll just end with somebody has posted great info. Thank you from a Facebook user. Thank you so much for joining us. And join us next week. We'll be talking to Judy M. Baker, and she is the book marketing mentor. We'll see you then.